You spoke about, before this interview, you spoke about commercial diplomacy.
Yes.
And how that will pan out.
I think the U.S. Understands that India is a hugely important trading partner, and as always, this is nothing new. The U.S. has definitely felt that way, and the U.S. also believes it has what India needs, whether it's in technology sense or just bilateral collaboration sense. So I wouldn't read too much into the fact where we are in terms of sandwich between which two countries. Our goal should be to do, how do we grow this trade? Grow this trade. Should India be at its current growth rate only, or do you aspire to a higher growth rate? I know the US certainly aspires to a much higher growth rate than where we are. And that traces to the interests of Indian companies and corporations and the needs of Indian consumers. And looking at those needs, also identifying where within the US, which US companies, institutions, corporations have the products, and where could these partnerships be made. So I think India is an incredibly important partner. And I'm pretty sure that's how just about everyone views it. We've never said, hey, we need to do this because China has done something else or Saudi Arabia has done something else. No, we'd rather look at it in terms of what is it that India needs and what is it that US businesses have to provide. And I think that itself will have a huge growth trajectory.
Therefore, you do not believe that trade by itself is also, in some senses, the silent arm of international diplomacy?
No, I do believe it is the silent arm because, I've always enjoyed a quote which says that borders visited by trade rarely need soldiers.
That's right.
And that's what it is. I think this is less to do with creating artificial borders and trade. It's opening up the trade borders because that is the diplomacy which leads to both collaboration, understanding, and mutual trust. I think it's a hugely important dimension of diplomacy and has been viewed as such.
Let me ask you then, in our lifetimes, Suresh Kumar, we have seen the McDonald's theory being absolutely discredited. I mean, at one point we used to believe that theory that countries, in a nutshell, in a snapshot, that have McDonald's do not go to war against each other. That has been discredited in our lifetimes. In the future, when you look at trade, and especially when you come in, it would be an interesting juncture to come in the world of commerce in America, because in some senses, commercial interest from America has been the big bad boy of the world in the last 5 or even 10 years.
I think every business has a social responsibility of good governance. And that good governance goes to how you bring products to market and what you do with the natural resources in any given country. I've had the privilege of working with American corporations, both those who've had a tremendous presence in India. I mean, Johnson & Johnson was in this country 30, 40 years ago, right. and managed to have a 75% equity stake in that country. It was able to do that and has significantly turned out great products which still meet a consumer need. And I think that's an obligation which every business would do, and I'm sure Indra Nooyi alluded to that. The issue is it's less to do with the good boy or the bad boy. It's more to do with what is right. I don't think anyone can go back and change what Pepsi did 10 years ago, but we can together plan what we need to do going forward. I'm enthused. I think the economic meltdown is a warning shot for everybody. That the global economy, it's a contagion, as you well know. Everything is interrelated. It needs to be relooked. How we work with each other needs to be relooked. But also, what we have as a planet and the products which different countries have, which have markets elsewhere, need to be explored. I am enthusiastic. I think you're right. This is a pivotal moment in time when people are looking back and redefining trade, and I'm excited with the possibility of doing precisely that.
In the next decade, then, what will be the defining agenda for trade and trade-based diplomacy? And my second question is, what is the role of the Indo-US trade ties in the larger scope of that global diplomacy?
I think that's a terrific question. I think the fact is that increasing the world realizes the value of trade and the value of interconnected trade. I think trade barriers, trade boundaries are crumbling, as they should. and the ability, both in a bilateral sense and a multilateral sense, to understand what constitute free and fair trade is going to be key. There are as many small and medium enterprises in India looking to export out to markets, having access to the US markets, as they are within the United States, willing to provide their products and services to the Indias of the world. And I think the next 10 years is going to be about connecting at that level. It's not just going to be the big corporations who have the wherewithal and for the most part have done what they need to do, but it is the mass movement from within the small and medium enterprises connecting with open markets. The policy makers in this need to create a framework which is fair and free. And I think I'm hoping that the decade of the 2010 starting decade, which will underscore this and begin a new movement in bilateral trade and multilateral trade, being more and more open with each other, and not only just the volume by way of dollar sales or dollar profits, but the volume of the number of parties, number of institutions, number of companies interacting and working with each other will exponentially grow. I have waited for this day since the day I was a student and got into my working life almost 35 years ago. And this is truly a businessman's dream come true. And I think the planets are well aligned to make it happen.
And where would the Indo-US trade ties be in the larger scope?
There is only one way for the Indo-US trade to go, and that's up, up, and up, both in not only in a revenue sense alone, but the percentage of trade we do with each other can only improve, as it must. I think India constitutes an incredibly powerful market, and India has much to offer to the world. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity, if confirmed by the US Senate, to work with policymakers here to create that environment.
My last question then, as an Indian American, and at the juncture that you will be sitting, if confirmed, in the administration, what do you believe your key role will be?
My key role is really to make trade happen. And let me qualify that, is to increase exports and in a responsible way. I think that is going to be the most important aspect, not only in terms of what's my own goal, but we talked about the role of trade in overall international sphere. So I look back and say, hey, India is growing, US has technology, and together we just need to do much bigger and better things for the rest of the world. As an Indian American, I am privileged to have been nominated by the President, but even more so the privilege is in serving the President to move the trade agenda forward and growing Indo-American trade. That's what I'm looking at.
Suresh Kumar, thanks very much indeed for your time. We hope to see you very soon in the Obama administration. And every time you stop by Delhi, I hope you'll remember us. Thanks very much indeed for your time.
Thank you so much, Hindol.